Maya had been married to Daniel for 8 years. On the surface, everything was stable. They owned a house, had 2 kids, paid their bills on time, and even shared a Netflix profile. But over time, conversations turned into logistics. Kisses became pecks. Touches were rare, and when they happened, felt mechanical. What Maya craved wasn't wild sex. It was emotional closeness. She missed the softness in Daniel's voice when he used to say her name. The way he used to look at her like she was the only thing in the room. It started slowly, always does. Jason, a senior consultant in her department, started complimenting Maya in small, non-threatening ways. You have a really calming energy, or you see people in ways others don't. At first, she brushed it off, but Jason saw her, really saw her, and when he'd linger after meetings or ask how her weekend was not out of politeness but real interest, she found herself leaning in emotionally at first. One Friday night, while working late, their hands touched while reaching for the same file. She didn't pull away, neither did he. When they finally kissed in the backseat of his car 2 weeks later, it wasn't rushed. It was aching, hesitant, electric. It wasn't sex that happened first. It was the silence after, the way Jason looked at her and said, "I've wanted to know what it feels like to make you feel. Everything." The first time they slept together, it was in a quiet Arab 2 towns away. He undressed her like he was learning her body for a thesis. No rush, just reverence. Maya said afterward, "He filled me slow, and I felt every inch." And she wasn't just talking about the physical. Every inch of her, forgotten, lonely, dismissed, felt awakened, but guilt didn't stay silent forever. Maya returned home and saw Daniel helping their daughter with homework. It punched her in the gut. How could she do this to him? To their family, yet she also realized something. She hadn't just cheated sexually. She'd found a mirror to her emptiness. She didn't confess the affair, but 2 weeks later, she asked Daniel if he was happy. It was the first real conversation they'd had in years. Story isn't about justifying infidelity. It's about the aching spaces between people that, if ignored long enough, create cracks wide enough for someone else to step into. Affairs like hers don't always come from lust. They come from silence, neglect, and unmet needs. If you'd like a part 2, from Jason's or Daniel's perspective, or a continuation of how Maya coped emotionally after, let me know. It doesn't always start with lust. It starts in the quiet moments, when you're sitting across from your partner at dinner, and you realize you haven't made eye contact in weeks. The silence between you isn't peaceful anymore. It's heavy, loaded with all the things you're not saying. That's how emotional emptiness creeps in, not with a scream but with a slow fade. One forgotten "how was your day," one missed touch, one eye roll instead of a real response. Over time, it becomes normal, but it still hurts. Maya used to count on Daniel to know when something was wrong. She'd shift slightly in bed, her back to him, hoping he'd pull her close. He didn't. She'd come home late from work, tired and emotionally spent, hoping for even one kind question. He was on his phone. She wasn't angry at first, just disappointed, and disappointment is quieter than anger, but it runs deeper. Every small letdown chipped away at what they used to have. Eventually, she stopped expecting warmth and learned to brace for cold. In those moments, emotional vulnerability becomes a quiet hunger. You don't plan it. You don't even know it's growing inside you. But when someone comes along and truly sees you, asks how you really are, and waits for the answer, it's like water in a drought. Jason wasn't flashy or flirty. He was just kind. He remembered things Maya mentioned in passing. He noticed when she was overwhelmed. He said things like, "You always hold so much together." And it wasn't just what he said. It was the way he looked at her, like she mattered. Like her mind was worth listening to, her emotions worth holding. The emotional connection started without intention. It grew in harmless lunches, shared complaints about work, and the space between words where she felt heard. Every time she smiled with Jason, it was because she felt light again. It had been years since someone leaned into her thoughts instead of away from them. Years since she felt wanted for more than what she did for others. At home, she kept showing up, packing school lunches, folding laundry, making dinner, but inside, something had changed. She realized she was craving Jason's presence more than Daniel's, and that terrified her. She felt like she was cheating emotionally before anything physical had even happened, and maybe she was, but in those moments, the emotional fulfillment was too intoxicating to resist. She wasn't chasing excitement. She was aching for comfort, and when that comfort came from someone else, it felt like relief, followed by confusion, shame, and longing, all tangled together. That's how affairs start more often than people realize, not from passion, but from neglect. From the need to be seen, held, and heard. And when your partner becomes emotionally unavailable, all it takes is one person reaching in at the right time, and your walls come down without you even noticing. The guilt came almost immediately, an ache in Maya's chest she couldn't shake. The morning after their first night together, she stared at herself in the bathroom mirror for a long time, toothbrush in hand but unmoving. Her body still remembered Jason's touch, the way he had taken his time, the way his hands didn't rush, didn't assume. It was the first time in years she had felt explored, not just physically, but emotionally, spiritually. She felt wanted again, not needed for chores or relied on for parenting, but genuinely, deeply desired, and then came the crushing weight of what she had done. She couldn't erase the look on Daniel's face the night before, calm, familiar, oblivious. He had kissed her good night out of routine while she was texting Jason from the bathroom. That kiss, compared to the one Jason gave her just hours earlier, felt like muscle memory, no hunger, no pull. She hated that it didn't move her. She hated more that Jason's kiss still lingered on her skin. Guilt didn't stop her from seeing Jason again. This is what most people don't understand about infidelity. It isn't always a reckless decision made by heartless people. Sometimes it's two deeply lonely people clinging to a moment that makes them feel alive. Maya wasn't proud of what she was doing. Every lie she told Daniel, working late, going to a team dinner, traffic's bad tonight, burned a little hole in her gut. And yet, every time Jason touched her, she melted. Her body would betray her guilt by aching for him. It wasn't just about the sex. It was the emotional closeness, the way he'd hold her after and say things like, "I don't want to leave you like this." She found herself caught in the emotional crossfire. Mornings were full of shame, nights were full of need. It became harder to justify, but even harder to stop. Her brain screamed this is wrong, but her heart whispered this feels right. Sometimes she'd cry after Jason left. Sometimes she'd come home and sit beside Daniel on the couch while he watched TV, wondering if he noticed how far she'd drifted. He didn't, or maybe he did and didn't want to confront it. Desire, once awakened, doesn't go dormant just because guilt arrives. Maya tried to create space from Jason. She avoided eye contact in meetings, let his texts sit unread, but the silence made her ache even more. When you've been emotionally starved, even stolen warmth feels like salvation. She was torn between the comfort of the life she built and the fire of the connection she found. One night, after they made love, Jason held her face and whispered, "You don't have to keep splitting yourself in two." But she did. She was a wife, a mother, a professional, and now a woman with a secret that made her feel both alive and ashamed. And in that duality, she began to understand something raw. Guilt is loud, but desire has a gravity of its own. It pulls even when you try to run.